Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Tonight let's cut to the chase on this 9/11 murder. We have sat on this case for approaching 15 years, and still some of the public have been so dumbed down and are as thick as shit, and still believe that some Arabs managed to beat our security systems, fly advanced planes into the World Trade Center towers, and that burning buildings self-implode and stack in neat piles. To keep this simple and easy for those idiots who are blindly walking and taking the earth into a mafia state-run prison, I shall show you why this murder of thousands was done by your New World Order mafia and not as stated in public. I want this short as possible and so hand it over to the main component where they have slipped up, and hope you all do the right thing, and for the sake of justice shout and scream murderers to your so-called leaders, who are all complicit and aiders and abettors to the mass murders. My final verdict is guilty, and those who did the joke 9/11 official reports also are guilty in a gross cover-up. All and any officials involved must be brought to trial and be punished with long-term prison sentences. All and any gains financially they made must also be taken back, as an example to other leaders, who need a serious reminder, that they are working for the people and not the people's masters. The people have had enough. Sentencing is down to you, the public. Turn a blind eye and hide under the bed as you're turned into slaves, or stand up and do something, awake others and get the history of this murder finally recognized. And unite and bring these evil rulers off their crowns soon as possible, and expose the evil rulers of our planet. Most the 9/11 World Trade Center videos are way too involved with technical stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not go over the normal stuff, with was they planes or missiles, was they as stated American Airlines planes and all that. It matters not a stuff what planes, it matters not a stuff who flew them. The guilty charge stands simply on the key obvious missed by many for 14 years points, which I as the brightest detective on the YouTube have assembled and now show. Sit back and learn and be amazed. Remember, thousands of innocent people are dead due to this planned bullshit murder of its own people. All done, with one aim, to keep us all slaves to the New World Order, and steal the Earth's minerals, other countries' lands, for their own financial gains. Time to say enough is enough. Do something, shout, tell others who can do something. In numbers the public can save the world. Do nothing and it's good night all. I now show the evidence, and will shut up a while.
Firstly, I would like to show and point out the timeline of that frightful day. As you will see, 8:45 a.m. all times are EDT, a hijacked passenger jet, American Airlines Flight 11 out of Boston, Massachusetts, crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, tearing a gaping hole in the building and setting it afire. Plane hits WTC. 9:03 a.m., a second hijacked airliner, United Airlines Flight 175 from Boston, crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center and explodes. Both buildings are burning. 9:17 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration shuts down all New York City area airports. 9:21 a.m., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey orders all bridges and tunnels in the New York area closed. 9:40 a.m., the FAA halts all flight operations at U.S. airports, the first time in U.S. history that air traffic nationwide has been halted. 10:05 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses, plummeting into the streets below. A massive cloud of dust and debris forms and slowly drifts away from the building. 10:28 a.m., the World Trade Center's North Tower collapses from the top down as if it were being peeled apart, releasing a tremendous cloud of debris and smoke. 4:10 p.m., Building 7 of the World Trade Center complex is reported on fire. 5:20 p.m., the 47-story Building 7 of the World Trade Center complex collapses. The evacuated building is damaged when the twin towers across the street collapse earlier in the day. Other nearby buildings in the area remain ablaze. 11:54 p.m., CNN Washington Bureau Chief Frank Cesno reports that a government official told him there was an open microphone on one of the hijacked planes and that sounds of discussion and duress were heard. Cesno also reports a source says law enforcement has credible information and leads and is confident about the investigation, and knows who did it and with what accomplices.
Interesting. The Wikipedia version of WTC-7. Some firefighters entered 7 World Trade Center to search the building. They attempted to extinguish small pockets of fire, but low water pressure hindered their efforts. Fires burned into the afternoon on the 11th and 12th floors of 7 World Trade Center, the flames visible on the east side of the building. During the afternoon, fire was also seen on floors 6 to 10, 13 to 14, 19 to 22, and 29 to 30. In particular, the fires on floors 7 through 9 and 11 through 13 continued to burn out of control during the afternoon. At approximately 2 p.m., firefighters noticed a bulge in the southwest corner of 7 World Trade Center between the 10th and 13th floors, a sign that the building was unstable and might cave to one side or collapse. During the afternoon, firefighters also heard creaking sounds coming from the building and issued uncertain reports about damage in the basement. Around 3:30 p.m. FDNY Chief Daniel A. Negro decided to halt rescue operations, surface removal, and searches along the surface of the debris near 7 World Trade Center and evacuate the area due to concerns for the safety of personnel. At 5:33 p.m. EDT on September 11, 2001, 7 World Trade Center started to collapse, with the crumble of the East Mechanical Penthouse, while at 5:21:10 p.m. EDT the entire building collapsed completely. There were no casualties associated with the collapse. Remember the saying follow the money? Well, maybe this is why World Trade Center Building 7 had to be destroyed. Number 7 World Trade Center housed U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) files relating to numerous Wall Street investigations, as well as other federal investigative files. All the files for approximately 3,000 to 4,000 SEC cases were destroyed. Although some were backed up elsewhere, others were not, especially those classified as confidential. Citation needed: files relating to Citigroup's connection to the WorldCom scandal were lost. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission estimated over 10,000 cases would be affected. Investigative files in the Secret Service's largest field office, of more than 200 employees, were also lost in the collapse of WTC-7. All the evidence that we stored at 7 World Trade, in all our cases, went down with the building, said one agent. As a point of interest, all this at the time of the looking for missing trillions of money was under investigations, and with World Trade Center 7 gone all paper trails went with it. Coincidence and lucky for some. Fire Chief Daniel Negro's statement taken from the 911 Commission report. And taken from Wikipedia. Steve Mosiello and Chief Turi told me they had been looking for Chief Gansey. They thought they knew where he was, unsuccessfully, and they were going back to. I walked back down to the area where he was and sometime after that they found Chief Gansey. He was like the first person that I knew of that they found in the rubble. He was somewhere across West Street from the Trade Center. The most important operational decision to be made that afternoon was the collapse had damaged 7 World Trade Center, which is about a 50-story building, at Vesey between West Broadway and Washington Street. It had very heavy fire on many floors and I ordered the evacuation of an area sufficient around to protect our members, so we had to give up some rescue operations that were going on at the time and back the people away far enough so that if 7 World Trade did collapse, we would not lose any more people. We continued to operate on what we could from that distance and approximately an hour and a half after that order was given, at 5:30 in the afternoon, World Trade Center collapsed completely. I continued to operate at the scene until probably somewhere around. A further statement from Fire Captain Anthony Variel said, we attempted to search and extinguish, at the time which was small pockets of fire in 7 World Trade Center. We were unaware of the damage in the front of 7, because we were entering from the northeast entrance. We weren't aware of the magnitude of the damage in the front of the building. We made searches. We attempted to put some of the fire out, but we had a pressure problem. I forget the name of the deputy. Some deputy arrived at the scene and thought that the building was too dangerous to continue with operations, so we evacuated number 7 World Trade Center. Around 3:30 p.m. Fire Deputy New York, Chief Daniel A. Negro decided to halt rescue operations. And nobody re-entered the building from our teams or others we know about. Now somebody is lying. Wasn't there a statement saying the fire brigade was told to pull the building?
As you can see, at 47 stories, it would stand out in most American cities.
He came back over with his hand over the radio, and it sounded like a countdown. And at the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1, and he was just saying, just run for your life, just run for your life. And then it was like another 2, 3 seconds, you heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when in compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something.
The fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and you know, we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was well, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. And you know, it was horrifying. Then you know, about a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground. You know, you were in shock, and then
high-rise buildings simply do not collapse due to fire.
By the Jewish owner, and yet the fire department have not a single statement to that effect, saying they pulled it. A few timelines are all differing, the whole thing is rotten to the core, many are lying. Indeed, the statements clearly state that they sectioned it off and kept clear, and yet videos eyewitnesses talk and clearly show controlled demolition.
We made it outside, we made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like if they had detonated.
Yeah,
detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
Now at what point did they go inside the burning dangerous building, and rig and set up the demolition charge gear, as let's backtrack on timeline. 1. Only after collapse of WTC numbers 1 and 2 did WTC number 7 catch fire and become a problem. This was at some 10:30 a.m., and no fires reported in WTC 7 until 4:10 p.m., and final collapse in a neat absolute perfect controlled collapse occurred at 5:20 p.m., so how on earth did the charges get placed prepared wired in 1 hour 10 minutes, assuming that nobody from the fire brigade would even dare stay in the building, yet alone carry masses of dangerous explosives over their shoulders? Since when has it been standard practice for fire officers to carry demolition equipment on the vehicles? How on earth would they buy and get delivered to the WTC-7, during total road shut-offs, and what by then was a massive unpassable rubble on all streets for miles? The opinion on 7 is, the third plane failed to keep schedule as this was possibly its target, but plans had to change, so they went ahead with the already pre-placed charges and detonated. Just this simple fact on World Trade Center number 7, is enough to make the whole bullshit storyline given to the public a lie and fabrication to hide the obvious facts that this was a pre-planned high-level government false flag attack, to cover an excuse to invade Afghanistan and Iraq and no doubt others, create anger and hatred and bring in total terrorist scares to the world, also destroying vital evidence which could be a risk to the New World Order plans. Now Your Honor, let's look at some clips of eyewitness statements of which not one is ever mentioned in the official 911 reports.
2 and 2, 1.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents. You can see the towers, a huge explosion now waiting to lay on all of us.
You want to call your mother or something?
We just heard one more explosion. That's about the 4th one we've heard.
The 2 buildings then exploded. They were leveled.
But there was another explosion on the far side of one of the buildings from where we're standing. The reverberation and another explosion on the right-hand side. There seemed to be another explosion, and also on the right-hand side.
The World Financial Center was blown up.
It was an explosion. It was in the lobby, and the 3rd explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
Is that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was
Yeah, definitely a secondary explosion. Because we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then it exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
We watched the first explosion. People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet.
You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on you inside the building. So I don't think it'll get any worse than this.
We were in the lobby, gathering to go up and start doing a search on the upper floors. So, as we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Now here is also something missed by all other 911 researchers, what we call the mystery flash. Many reports state of light orbs, UFO activity in the region, also reports of a laser weapon launched from the Woolworths building, although we believe it's not a conventional laser weapon, but the flash is a high electric signal setting the charges off seen during this day. We have not time to cover those in detail, but this flash is the exact type of flash as used in remote detonation devices, and when UFO orbs power up and communicate and leave our airspace. Many videos on this are documented, again though we shall show an example prior to running the mystery flash and obvious controlled demolition fall of World Trade Center 2 building. Please watch very closely, look at the screen and you will see a bright flash throughout the region a second before the collapse. This we believe is proof of detonation of placed charges within the building. Note also how the building drops in free fall, an impossible thing, unless the center columns have been destroyed in a downward manner. Blasts would run downwards at millisecond intervals. This explains the apparent total turn to powder final collapse. Only this one camera recorded this due to its light level and frame rate. Not many will have seen this one. Likewise the actual WTC Building 7 charge detonation video, again is very rare and not previously seen by many. Anyway, watch the following videos and we are sure, when you see what experts and genuine witnesses have to say, you will realize this is the biggest false flag and the biggest con of the world in the history books, secondary only to the Great Holocaust scam. And Your Honor, Wikipedia needs bringing to justice for deliberately fooling the people. Remember 911 murdered thousands upon thousands of people, and as such some will fire officers, and all others obviously involved in the 911 cover-up. All those who did the official reports, have failed at their jobs. Need to be charged accordingly. Thank you Your Honor, we rest our case, and let you see the videos, and you and the people can decide. Do we let them carry on taking over the world, or is there still enough decent people willing to say no more? Time to stand up, and say fuck your new world order, fuck you're destroying our planet, we will never be slaves, and we ain't falling for your bullshit terrorist ballots any longer. Sorry for the language Your Honor, but, after all this time, we find it hard to believe the public still think a man with a beard in a cave did all this, and nobody cares that the earth is being taken over slowly and surely. I shall leave you to the videos now. Thank you.
Somebody said that they saw an airliner going to one of those towers. Then, I don't know, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
Then there was those secondary explosions and then the subsequent collapses.
It sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
About 50 consecutive bangs, and it fell down like a waterfall.
And we heard the noise associated with an implosion. And you heard the boom, 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 boom.
Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like as if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
And it just started going pop. It just started going boom, 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 boom. And he goes, how fast? I go like firecrackers.
They're reporting exactly what I would expect. You're hearing boom, 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 waves of explosions going off. Not one massive big boom.
One is that in the months previous to 9/11, a major renovation of the elevator system in both towers was undertaken.
From the March 2001 issue of Elevator World, we read, Ace Elevator undertook what was perhaps one of the largest, most sophisticated elevator modernization programs in the industry's history at New York City's prestigious World Trade Center. No one is suggesting that this company had anything to do with the possible planting of explosives, but such an extensive renovation process would have certainly provided the cover for a special team to access the internal structure of the buildings at any given time. As explained by Richard Heumann, Chief Electrical Engineer for the Twin Towers, the elevator shafts gave direct access to the core columns.
I'm very familiar with the interior structure that surrounded the elevator shafts, and of course their access to the elevator shafts gave them total access to the surrounding core columns, the interior of the core columns.
Secondly, the movement of heavy equipment on floors that were supposedly empty was noticed in the weeks leading up to 9/11. Scott Forbes worked for a financial institution on the 97th floor of the South Tower.
It must have been at least 4 to 6 weeks before 9/11. It was like rebuilding work going on upstairs. The tenants, the people from Aon who had been there were moved somewhere else. The offices were just vacant. And there was a lot of heavy machinery building work going on. It was almost like pneumatic drills and lots of hammering, so much so that the floors were shaking. That's how noticeable it was. It was almost as if something heavy was being moved and then it was being taken off wheels, and it was like, boom. Our floor underneath literally shook. You could feel the weight above you.
William Rodriguez, an employee at the Twin Towers for more than 20 years, recalls a similar experience.
As I stood there on the 33rd floor, I heard very strange noises on the 34th floor. I heard very heavy equipment being moved around, and it sounded like dumpsters with metal wheels being moved around, and I got scared because I knew it was an empty floor. Nobody was supposed to be there. As a matter of fact, not even the elevators stop there. You have to have a special access key to open the door on the 34th floor.
Thirdly, after the 1993 attack, bomb-sniffing dogs had been adopted in the security system of the Twin Towers. But on Thursday, September the 6th, bomb-sniffing dogs were abruptly removed, according to a security guard, with no apparent reason. And lastly, there was an unprecedented power down in the South Tower on the very weekend before 9/11. For the first time in 30 years, all the security systems in the building had become useless at the same time. People could come and go as they pleased, even in protected areas, without being seen nor recorded by surveillance cameras.
The previous weekend there had been a power down. Because of the power down, there was a complete breakdown of security that weekend. We had guided tours coming into secured areas by mistake and nobody picking it up because there's no intrusion alarms or anything else.
Scott Forbes was also present during the power down.
There was a power down in the South Tower on the weekend of the 8th and 9th of September. And it wouldn't have just have affected camera security, it would have affected all the secure systems on doors for either key locks or security badges and so on. To undo them, they weren't working because they're all powered by electricity, so there was no power, there was no backup system, therefore they were all open.
What again was the excuse that the Port Authority gave you, Scott, for this 36-hour period of the power being down in the South Tower?
The explanation was that there was a recabling exercise to increase the bandwidth of networks that were available in the towers.
The debunkers are right. It would have been very difficult to bring in the explosives without being noticed. But with the proper cover story, it could have been done under everyone's eyes, in full daylight, without anybody even questioning what was going on.
And as far as the initial impacts, this recent NIST study made an interesting point about World Trade Centers. The film analysis showed that it oscillated for about 4 minutes after it was struck by the airplane, and the oscillation rate was identical to what would be expected for the intact tower. Trade Center towers in most modern buildings are heavily redundant in the sense that the load bearing can be shifted to other members if some of them fail, and we saw that happen in this case. Stresses do redistribute, but absent further weakening of the structural members, that distribution is limited. It happens, the structure restabilizes, and unless there's significant further damage, it doesn't progress to a total collapse. For the towers to collapse the way we saw them collapse basically implies that the columns simply collapsed into themselves. They telescoped straight down. Steel keeps a lot of its structural integrity, even when heated, until you begin to approach the melting point. You don't really see a catastrophic loss of strength, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about basically vertical box columns collapsing into themselves, which implies a complete loss of mechanical strength.
The top section pushing on the bottom section, it's going to meet equal forces as it goes. Both sections are going to be demolished at the same rate. So by the time you've crushed up 15 stories below it, the top 15 stories are also going to be crushed. And so there's nothing left now to crush the rest of the building.
Something of this kind is what we should have seen when the top section of the towers collapsed onto the lower one. The upper and lower sections should have mutually destroyed each other until all the energy is dissipated and the system comes to a rest. Alternatively, as shown in this experiment with 2 towers made of snow, the top section could have fallen off to the side after the initial collapse. What could not have happened is this.
A little tiny chunk of the building can't possibly fall and crush the entire structure below it.
This is such a simple, fundamental concept that architects and engineers were astonished in seeing it totally ignored by NIST.
This is high school physics, and our whole society is being led to believe that these fundamental laws of physics, hard science, don't apply anymore.
But even if we assume that the top section of the tower had enough potential energy to destroy the rest of the structure below, it could not have done so at the speed it did, which was near freefall speed. Assuming that the top section on the left contains enough potential energy to destroy the rest of the tower, and assuming we dropped both upper sections at the same time, which one would hit the ground first? It would be the second, of course. As it finds no obstacles in its path, the section on the right would quickly accelerate to freefall speed and maintain it all the way to the ground. The section on the left, instead, needs to use some of its energy to destroy the structure below, so it could never achieve freefall speed. In the case of the Twin Towers, however, both upper sections fell with an acceleration close to freefall speed, as if their path had been practically free from obstacles. It took each tower between 10 and 12 seconds to collapse to the ground, while an absolute freefall time would have been 9.2 seconds. In other words, both upper sections of the towers found enough energy to destroy 80,000 tons of healthy structure below, while accelerating to near freefall speed. This is, as we have said, absolutely impossible by gravity alone. The law of momentum conservation won't allow it.
A building cannot do free fall with a huge steel structural system in place to support it.
The Twin Towers could not have come straight down through the resistance of 80,000 tons of structural steel at the speed of practically free fall. That just would not happen.
If in fact it actually hit and made an impact, it was effectively crushing anything, pushing hard on this core structure below it, the core structure is going to push back equally hard. And that's what's going to cause the top section of the building to slow down.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Tonight let's cut to the chase on this 9/11 murder. We have sat on this case for approaching 15 years, and still some of the public have been so dumbed down and are as thick as shit, and still believe that some Arabs managed to beat our security systems, fly advanced planes into the World Trade Center towers, and that burning buildings self-implode and stack in neat piles. To keep this simple and easy for those idiots who are blindly walking and taking the earth into a mafia state-run prison, I shall show you why this murder of thousands was done by your New World Order mafia and not as stated in public. I want this short as possible and so hand it over to the main component where they have slipped up and hope you all do the right thing, and for the sake of justice shout and scream murderers to your so-called leaders, who are all complicit and aiders and abettors to the mass murders. My final verdict is guilty, and those who did the joke 9/11 official reports also are guilty in a gross cover-up. All and any officials involved must be brought to trial and be punished with long-term prison sentences. All and any gains financially they made must also be taken back, as an example to other leaders, who need a serious reminder, that they are working for the people and not the people's masters. The people have had enough. Sentencing is down to you the public. Turn a blind eye and hide under the bed as you're turned into slaves, or stand up and do something, awake others and get the history of this murder finally recognized. And unite and bring these evil rulers off their crowns soon as possible, and expose the evil rulers of our planet. Most the 9/11 World Trade Center videos are way too involved with technical stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not go over the normal stuff, with was they planes or missiles, was they as stated American Airlines planes and all that. It matters not a stuff what planes, it matters not a stuff who flew them. The guilty charge stands simply on the key obvious missed by many for 14 years points, which I as the brightest detective on the YouTube have assembled and now show. Sit back and learn and be amazed. Remember, thousands of innocent people are dead due to this planned bullshit murder of its own people. All done, with one aim, to keep us all slaves to the New World Order, and steal the Earth's minerals, other countries' lands, for their own financial gains. Time to say enough is enough. Do something, shout, tell others who can do something. In numbers the public can save the world. Do nothing and it's good night all. I now show the evidence, and will shut up a while.
Firstly, I would like to show and point out the timeline of that frightful day. As you will see, 8:45 a.m. all times are EDT, a hijacked passenger jet, American Airlines Flight 11 out of Boston, Massachusetts, crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, tearing a gaping hole in the building and setting it afire. Plane hits WTC. 9:03 a.m., a second hijacked airliner, United Airlines Flight 175 from Boston, crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center and explodes. Both buildings are burning. 9:17 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration shut down all New York City area airports. 9:21 a.m., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey orders all bridges and tunnels in the New York area closed. 9:40 a.m., the FAA halts all flight operations at U.S. airports, the first time in U.S. history that air traffic nationwide has been halted. 10:05 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses, plummeting into the streets below. A massive cloud of dust